Hello, welcome to Jewish Museum Milwaukee's Museum Moments. Today, this is the final museum moment of our week dedicated to Yom HaShoah. This is a week that we've spent looking at the Holocaust and Holocaust remembrance and how we tell stories of the Holocaust in Jewish Museum Milwaukee. I know that this is not the end of our week of exploring the Holocaust. This is just one moment in time. And this is something that we are constantly doing, constantly thinking about, constantly trying to engage individuals and groups in the legacy and memory of the Holocaust. And so while this is one week in a whole year that a lot of people are focused on this, I want everyone here to know that this is a constant focus of ours and that we'll be continuing to do Holocaust-focused work, whether it's around Yom HaShoah or whether it's just around the rest of the calendar year. Today, I am really excited about the story I get to tell. It's a story that I tell in the museum. It's a story that I got to delve a little bit deeper into this week. And one of my great pleasures right now of being home is having the opportunity to talk to some of the people who've given some of the objects that are in the museum and clarifying the stories and hearing a little bit more about this. So today we are going to talk about some objects, some things that Eva Zaret gave to the museum. And just by a show of chat, if you guys could let me know if you know Eva personally, that would be wonderful. And, you know, if you want to add your own remembrances, or not remembrances, she's very alive and well right now. She actually, as I said earlier, Eva is a member of the Holocaust Education Resource Center Survivors Speakers Bureau. She is a wonderful community member. But I had the chance to talk to her this week, and I really got a lot of insight into her story. And one of the things that I find really interesting about the kind of central artifact that I'm going to talk about, her scroll, is that this is an object that that came to us from after World War II. And it's an object, and often when we talk about the experience of the experiences of the Holocaust, we have this, moment when we are only looking at the years from 1939 to 1945, or maybe from 1933 to 1945. And if you're a survivor of the Holocaust, like Eva says, that you're always a survivor, you're always in that mindset on some level or another. I know that was Magda Watts who said that she always had this feeling. So this is a piece that really illustrates that experience. Robin says, I'm frozen. Am I frozen, people? Comment, let me know if you're not seeing this. So I'm going to let Eva's objects speak for themselves a bit. These two pictures she sent me this week, the one of her and the lady is Eva and her mother, and the one of Eva in this beautiful garden, she's this little girl right here in the black coat with the gentleman. This is the last time she saw her father. Now, Eva's story takes place in Hungary. And Hungary has a very different way of exploring the Holocaust. The Hungarian government was a collaborator government for the Nazis, and they at first implemented their own Nazi policy. And so part of this policy was that they shipped Jewish men off to work camps. And Eva's father was shipped off to a mine on the Yugoslav border called Bor, where he was working and doing hard labor, like really hard labor. They were digging bunkers. They were living outside. This was incredibly, terrible conditions. People were dying in these conditions. And yet there was still some small degree of protection. All of this, and there was a lot of misinformation that was going around. This is actually a picture of Eva's father in this work camp in front of this bunker that he was in part in charge of helping dig. He was able to send home one postcard. This is it. And it says in a bunch of different languages, I am well, all is good. And, that's kind of a crazy thing that this is the only kind of sign of life you have from your father. And a year and a half after he had been deported to this work camp, they are sent back to Budapest, where Eva and her mother are living. And in this time, Eva's father is and there's a number of Yugoslav partisans who say you shouldn't go, something terrible is going to happen. And he goes back and he is executed at the border. They dig their own graves. It is that kind of mass execution, which is really, really horrific. So Eva has already lost one of her parents. She and her mother and her aunt and her grandmother all survive in Budapest during the war. They're in what is a ghetto in Budapest. And she's 7 years old, 8 years old at the end of the war, and is in pretty poor shape. You know, she doesn't have a lot of strength. She's been malnourished for years. And her mother takes her to a doctor after the war is over. They've been liberated at this point. And the doctor says, she needs to get out of Budapest. You should take her somewhere where she could maybe get more food. So Eva's aunt takes her up to the Carpathian Mountains. And in the Carpathian Mountains, there's all sorts of rubble and all of these things where the war has just finished. And Eva is an 8-year-old kid who is without her parents. She is all alone, and she is feeling very sad, very angry. She said she was angry at everything. She cried day and night. She would go out and just kick rocks and talk to God and say, "Why did you do this to me?" And in one of these rock kicking adventures, she finds a little scroll with a prayer inside. This is what it looks like in our collection. And she took this scroll, and actually it's like a Hebrew prayer on the inside. She said that Elliot Bernstein, who is the husband of our founding director, Kathy Bernstein, identified the prayer. But in that little prayer, she took it, and she had kept with her the star that she had been forced to wear. And she took her Jewish star and she created the covering for this. And, you know, she embroidered the little Magen David that you see on there, the Star of David. And then this became her conduit to talk to God. She's, you know, an 8-year-old kid, and she's looking for some way of understanding what happens. Now, she and her mother comes to the mountains eventually, and her aunt, they all end up staying there. And actually at one point, this part of Hungary becomes Ukraine, and they have Ukrainian passports. So they're no longer even Hungarian nationals at this point. It's very confusing. She gets married very young and has a baby. 10 years later, she's 18 years old. And she is leaving the mountains very briefly for the first time in 10 years to go see her husband's family in Budapest. And she finds her husband's family in Budapest, and it happens to be the week that the Hungarian Revolution, all of this stuff comes in, the Soviets are invading, and everything goes down in 1956. Her world is turned upside down yet again. And now it's this sense of, we can't stay in Hungary, we have to get out of here. And they are able to escape with a 1-year-old baby. And I'm going to show you a picture of that beautiful baby. To Austria. When they get to Austria, they have Ukrainian passports, and Hungarian. There's a very small Hungarian quota that's quickly filled because so many people are trying to get out of Hungary. But because they have this Ukrainian passport, because they were in the Carpathian Mountains, they come to America, and they come to Paterson, New Jersey, and Eva continued that sense of kind of questioning God. But one of the things that this actually drives her to is a sense of religious devotion and exploration. And she spends many, many years studying, and she becomes very observant. She keeps Shabbat. She comes later to Milwaukee. She remarries and marries actually the CEO of the Milwaukee Jewish Federation for many years, Mel Zaret. And she becomes very much engaged in her Judaism as part of her remembrance. And it's really interesting to talk to her about this, because one of the things she'll say is, you know, I've been in a Bible study for 42 years, that she's really explored her life as a Jew. And this is one of the things, that I think her response as a survivor was to be more engaged with her Judaism, which I found to be really compelling and very interesting. She shared with me some pictures of her family, and she has now, this only says that she has 2 great-grandchildren, but she has 4 great-grandchildren. And I want to close with this quote from her, which she says, "To live life is to aim to be worthwhile and to love your fellow man. Love your family without judgment and leave behind good memories. The end is nothing else than the victorious end of the adventure, which is life. And God said to Abraham, your seeds will multiply like the stars of the heaven." It is such a pleasure to be able to share Eva's story and to understand more what she experienced and all of the different aspects of survival here, that even after she survived, that there's still all of that anger that she had to process, that it wasn't an immediate like, hey, I'm survived and everything's okay. And even after that, 10 years later, she's still in that status as a refugee, trying to figure out how to rebuild a life and to start over again. I am always inspired and heartened by these stories of resilience and strength. And I think in a time like right now, it is so important to share them and to have a better understanding of them. So next week, we're going to be exploring Golda. We're going to start out on Tuesday with her as a young girl, and then we're going to explore her life in Milwaukee, and we're going to end with how she becomes this kind of massive political figure. So it's going to be a great week next week for Museum Moments. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. And if you enjoy these museum moments, feel free to make a donation. You can do that at our page. Oh, and look, I have a guest star today. Nora Nellis, everybody.